Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for October 18th, 2024. I'm Benji Fisher moderating, and Ralph Kohler is sharing their screen, and we'll start off the discussion. And also present are Randy Ost, Simo Helston, and Thomas Howell. Go ahead, Ralph.
Okay. We are looking at issue 3471896, inconsistent use of language regarding plugins. At the moment, as the problem motivation states, in the CK editor configurations, plugins are referred to inconsistently in the interface. This means it is not clear that each toolbar button is a plugin. This can lead to confusion with regard to following instructions or resolving errors if the administrator does not realize that the toolbar icon represents a plugin. As mentioned here, I'll go to one text format, in my case, full HTML. The issue creator suggested basic HTML. Expected result, move a button into the active toolbar to enable that plugin or into the list of available buttons to disable it, and so forth. Actual result, move a button into the active. As you can see here, you have available buttons and you have active toolbar, and you have move a button into the active toolbar to enable it. And I quickly switch over to the other branch. Good.
Or if you want, as usual, I've prepared a site anyone can log into as admin with just the current 11.x.
And as you can see here, the changes that are made, they've changed basically from available buttons to available buttons / plugins, and changed here active toolbar plugins, active toolbar to active toolbar plugins. As you can see here, I can from available buttons to available buttons plugins, and from active toolbar plugins. And then they've changed also that bit and added the reference to plugins there as well. And 1 second, oops. They've also added a second point I just noticed underneath. If source editing is a plugin, a list of HTML tags that can be used and that bit was also updated, or but it's not reflected basically in the merge request in here. So that is missing. But that is the rough outline, as far as I remember, what this issue is about. To be more explicit about that buttons are plugins and communicate it more clearly in the interface.
Okay, so this issue is about the possible confusion between the term button and plugin, which seem to be used interchangeably in some places. Go ahead, Thomas.
I'm worried that my opinion may not be super popular, but I need to answer a question first. Are we talking about Drupal plugins, or are we talking about CK editor plugins?
That's a good point. That's a possibility for further confusion. I believe these are Drupal plugins, many of which are wrappers for CK editor plugins. Does that sound right?
I don't know. I'm only mildly familiar with plugins as a concept in Drupal as opposed to how they really call plugins in WordPress. That's what we call modules. And so um, I guess from a usability perspective, I'm struggling to see how putting the word plugin enhances a user's experience or administrator's experience. I could see it helping a coder who would wrapper new plugins in the back end, assuming these are Drupal plugins. But I'm struggling to see what the purpose is for any administrator, like a site builder. They come in here, why do they care if it's called a button or a plugin?
Right, and that's certainly something we'll have to consider. Is the right solution to use the word plugin more on this page, or is the right solution to use the word plugin less on this page?
Agreed.
Simo, what do you want to say?
Yeah, it's a little bit about the same what Thomas was saying, that I think if we need to use two different words for things that look the same, then I think we have a problem somewhere else. So if everything looks the same, they should be called the same. Otherwise, we should also visually differentiate what is a button and plugin, and so that it would make sense. So all of them look like buttons, or well, actually, some of them are kind of a drop-down list, but still, they kind of look like buttons. So we should call them buttons, I think. So we shouldn't differentiate if they don't look different. So we just should use one word here and then somewhere else something else if it's more technical.
Okay, and you got a thumbs up from Ralph on that. Before we go on, I want to point out Rosendo Figuero has joined us. I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name too badly. Um, Thanks for joining.
Hello, it's my first time joining Rosendo Figueroa. Thanks for no worries, I get it. It's hard, but yeah, thanks for inviting. I'm grateful to be here.
Okay, and since it is your first time, feel free to speak up if you have something to say, but also if you're more comfortable sitting back and watching, that's fine too. And also if it's easier for you to type rather than write, I try to keep an eye on the meeting chat.
Oh, thanks, appreciate it. Yeah, I'll keep an eye on it, and yeah, I'm listening right now, and if anything comes up, I'll definitely speak up.
Okay, Ralph, go ahead.
I agree what Thomas and Simo said, and I wonder one detail, of course, and going back to Thomas's initial question, who would benefit in the issue summary, the issue creator mentioned that in case of errors, it helps resolving those. So I wonder, wouldn't it be, I'm not familiar with the technical details and how to trigger an error in that context of CK Editor 5 here, but I wonder, wouldn't it be the better choice to keep basically the terminology of a button here? Because, yeah, that is what it is visually here. And then instead of that, rephrase the error message and add the aspect of, yeah, the button is a plugin in some sort of way there. Those that in context, if a person that is concerned either could point that error message that is pointing to plugins in the context of buttons to a developer, or if the person is themselves a developer, knows, okay, I have to look in plugins in that context.
Okay. So let's see. I think what you're looking at now is the version with the patch, correct?
Correct. Shall I move back to the regular version at the current?
If you want, you can open up the link I gave.
Okay, yeah. One sec.
And then you can just easily switch tabs. So if I search the page for the word plugin, I find it in two places. At the very bottom of your screen right now, it says CK Editor 5 plugin settings. Whoops, no, you scrolled too far. It was on the screen, just at the bottom.
Up.
Yeah, keep going up. There, right below the toolbar configuration field set, there's a heading that says CK Editor 5 plugin
Okay.
settings. There, and then if you open up source editing, the description field there says plugin a couple of times. My initial thought is that we should be removing the word plugin rather than adding it and consistently referring to buttons. But I also have sort of a different suggestion because I get a thumbs up from Thomas. I also have a sort of more radical suggestion. As Simo pointed out, some of these are select lists rather than buttons. So it's not really accurate to call them all buttons. I'm not sure I like the phrase to enable a button. And maybe since they're all being put into the toolbar, we should call them tools? Or is that just introducing yet another word for the same thing and leading to more confusion?
I mean, my personal thought is that like whenever I would talk about this with anyone, I'd be like, I would refer to them as buttons. I mean, they're not like actually buttons, but anything else, like, I don't know. If we can find a better term, that's fine. But I really think like, like, oh, the toolbar buttons, even though like some of them are drop downs.
And Ralph suggests toolbar elements. I was also thinking of toolbar items. So using something more generic like element or item is another option. Thomas?
I would second item. I think I've seen that used elsewhere. Um, I I find that plugins is too technical a term, and I would also second removing it from elsewhere on the page. It could be part of CK editor documentation, but I don't feel that that documentation makes sense within the context of a Drupal interface because a lot of as a site builder in the past, it would have just confused me more. Whereas if I then went to the CK editor as a part of Drupal web page and we talked about what it was, that would be a good place to document CK5 plugins and how you wrapper them. And I would also second the idea of improving the errors on the back end if the motivation for this particular change is to address confusion around errors. Fixing the errors makes more sense to me than diving into something that less technical people are going to be interfacing with.
Okay. Ralph?
Just one thought. I was curious and just looked over, I posted in the chat, how CK Editor actually addresses these elements, if those terminology choices are Drupal specific or if they carried over from CK Editor 5. And that's the link I found on a quick search. And they refer to as buttons and drop downs and as interface elements in general within the toolbar.
Okay, the toolbar is the most basic user interface element, blah, blah, blah. It has buttons and drop downs that you can use to format, manage, sort, blah, 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 blah. Right. So basically, the short takeaway from that is that CKEditor itself does not refer to plugins in user-facing documentation. I get a hand wave from Thomas. What is that? Was that supposed to be a thumbs up?
That's a cheer.
That's a cheer.
Happy.
Okay.
I like user documentation that users can use.
Yes.
If we actually use two different words here, available buttons and drop downs, then it would be clear also that you don't have to see that little icon on the right and then assume that there will be other stuff underneath. That's kind of, to us it's obvious, but in a way it would kind of also in words explain that some of these have more to them than what you can directly see on the thing. So it's kind of a style, so it kind of would communicate available buttons and drop downs. It would communicate to the user that that style button-like thing has other stuff inside that you can't currently see.
Okay, so you're saying that besides being inaccurate, that just calling them buttons is possibly confusing, and it would be helpful to use a more accurate phrase like button or drop down.
Yeah.
And that would also be consistent with the CKEditor documentation that Ralph found. So I think that we have consensus that we should not be using the term plugin on this user-facing page. Is that right? Getting a thumbs up from Ralph. A couple more thumbs up. Okay. Rosendo, do you want to say something? I see you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I'm good. I have a question because I'm looking on my Drupal site. Is this just in the configuration where it says button? Because I don't see it like on a basic page.
So it's in the admin UI. So Ralph
Yeah.
is showing you how to get
Okay.
there. Configuration,
Yep.
content authoring, text formats and editors, and then edit one of the text formats.
Okay. Yeah, I don't like the word button. I saw that the element or like even an item, I think more generic, move an item into the active toolbar or element, I think makes sense as well. Just trying to get a better understanding of who the user is in this situation. I think, like you said, site builder. I get that maybe the button is a term that they use in CKEditor, but not everyone who's going to be in here has CKEditor 5 documentation. So, and I heard what other people were saying with like plugins and modules and WordPress. So I like the idea of making it more generic for Drupal. So yeah, like an item or element would make the most sense for me.
Yeah. That's certainly a viable option. Other opinions? Should we go generic or should we stick with button or should we broaden it to button or drop down?
I note that there we have one label that's available buttons plus something else maybe, but then there is a button divider that's also on the other sections. So kind of these would be also elements in a way if we use just the generic So
Good point.
active toolbar elements, but then it would be using like a lot of different words.
Yeah, so if in this help text for toolbar configuration, it makes sense to use a generic term like element or item, then what do we use for the text right below that where it currently says CK Editor 5 plugin settings? Thomas?
So seeing items there, for me, that's short. And so it could be active toolbar items, item divider, active toolbar items. And that's the shortest number of characters. And then CK5 plugin would become CK5 settings. Like I don't see the value that plugin adds. You could, if we need to, we could say CK5 settings for toolbar, or toolbar items, if we want to be very specific. But personally, I think CK5 settings is sufficient for me.
So
And I would,
less is more.
yeah, less
If
is
you're
more, and a button divider should be item divider, Ralph.
It could be just divide, maybe.
Even better.
Yeah, I agree with Simo because button divider, item divider, do you divide an item? That could be also
You can drop,
confusing.
yeah, just divider was great.
Yeah.
I could just bring one other possible term into discussion. Though all of those
Sure.
buttons and drop downs, they are in some terminology, they are controls. I think WebCAG uses the word control for something you interact with.
I'm sorry, what uses that term?
WebCAG and some W3C documents.
Okay.
So it could be, so I'm not sure about the exact definition of what is a control. And actually there are some issues that what is a control? It doesn't, it's not well defined, but yeah, but we control would be something that user can interact. So control would be distinct from a divider, which doesn't do anything if you click it. Control is like controls. It's a word that is used well with media players, embedded media players, and stuff like that. So at least, but it could be used maybe here as well.
Okay. Well, going back to what we now have the CK Editor 5 settings, why not just settings? Where else in the user interface do we identify CK Editor 5 or CK Editor?
You usually have a small logo in the lower right corner, I thought, for CK Editor 5 on the node edit page.
All right, well, that's something that, is added by the CK Editor code. That's not something that we chose to put there. We being Drupal community, Drupal developers. Go ahead, Thomas.
In the other tab, Ralph, if you could go back.
Where? In which?
See that we're selecting text editor, CK editor 5. My only question here is if we were, and please don't do it where you've made all these awesome changes for consideration, but if we changed CK editor 5 from the text editor to something else, do the settings area change? Because it says CK editor 5 settings. If we used a different text editor, would this then change down below?
Mm, 1 sec.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it would change these. So there's the CK editor JavaScript library. There's the CK editor 5 module in Drupal. I'm not aware of anyone who's given an alternative to CK editor 5 in modern Drupal. But if they did, there would be different options available.
I'm thinking after watching Ralph go through it, though, that it's moot because the entire area vanishes and it would be replaced with something else. So calling it just settings, I think, again, shorter, simpler, more to the point as a site builder, that makes a lot more sense to me.
Anyone disagree? Just call it settings. I find it a little odd that the heading settings is in a smaller font than the items below it, but that's the responsibility of the theme to choose font sizes. So it's out of scope
Yeah,
there. And I saw a thumbs up from Randy.
yeah. I just wanted to speak up. I agree. If you scroll up, I didn't know this, but when you selected none, um, it changes the fields. So just based off of that experience, when you select CK Editor 5, it's very clear what we're doing. So the need to even say CK Editor and plugin is redundant because it's letting you know that we've already selected CK Editor 5. So I think it's very simple. Like you said, we can just say settings, and there's really no reason. If we select like Mercury Editor or Gutenberg, it would be pretty obvious we're talking about that editor. So I don't see the need of adding CK Editor 5 in it.
Right. And Ralph also mentioned in the Zoom chat that Mercury Editor and Gutenberg are other options. And presumably if you enabled those modules, they'd appear in this drop-down list. And yeah. Okay, so I think we have consensus that just settings is all we need there. Um, so are we ready to make a recommendation, or are there still open questions? Ralph?
The highlighted section here that is talking about, for one, plugins, and in other, and also about buttons only. I think there it could be referred to buttons and drop downs as well as the dividers somehow.
Right. And I think you're still looking at the proposed text from the current merge request, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
1 second, I'll look over how it's phrased. Move a button into active toolbar to enable it, or into the list of available buttons to disable it, is the current state.
So I would say move an item into the active toolbar to enable it. You can't get much shorter than it.
1 sec. Move an item into
Yes. So leave that word alone.
to enable. Okay, no.
Or into the list of available items to disable it. And then, of course, we'd want to change the heading just below from available buttons to available items. And Offer Shal has joined us. Hi, Offer.
That way?
To enable it, you lost the word it.
Okay.
Although,
because I thought it then would it used 2 times and referred to it 2 times in a row, basically. Therefore, I thought it would be an option to remove it in the first time.
could go either way. If you want to remove the first it, then I would add a comma after disable.
Yeah.
But I think I prefer being a little bit more verbose and having it in both places, but
Okay.
that's just my preference. So Offer, briefly, we're discussing the user interface text on this page where you configure a text editor. And the word plugin is used in a couple of places, and we think that the word plugin should mostly be removed, and also we're replacing the word button with something more generic like item or element. Some of the items in the toolbar are select lists or drop downs rather than buttons, and some of them are dividers. So we feel that using button is inaccurate and slightly confusing.
Oh, but I just noticed one detail. We should use the same titles. At the moment, we just write available items, and it should be available toolbar items and active toolbar items.
Yeah, those should be consistent. So the current text is just available buttons and active toolbar, and I would just change the first one to available items. Rather than, so I would lose the word toolbar, just available items.
We could also list the items on the bottom one, so it would be just active toolbar.
Yeah, I like that. And that's the current text, just active toolbar. I would keep that text. Thomas?
I just wanted to note 2 things. Where it says buttons may be moved, we probably want to change buttons to items.
Right.
And the second thing is, I see a sentence, you have configured a multi-role toolbar by using an explicit wrapping breakpoint. As a site, I know what that means as having used Drupal for a while, but I find that sentence to be confusing in what it's, and especially since we're changing button dividers to dividers, I would be more explicit in terms of that you're using a divider and that there are 2 types of dividers, because we have instructions about moving items around, but we don't have any explicit instructions about dividers. So I think putting that in there, if possible, succinctly, would help to complete it as a documentation source or in place documentation.
I didn't even know this multi-line divider was an available option.
It is.
Cool.
But the behavior is a bit odd. So I've changed now back to available items, and active toolbar and dividers was kept. So active toolbar List of available.
Near the top of the text field, you still have active toolbar items. That should just be active toolbar.
But I'm on it right now. Toolbar.
Or into the list of available items. And then items may be moved, as Thomas said, rather than buttons may be moved.
Oh yeah.
And then the text in here changes depending on whether you've used that multi-line divider. So both versions of the text have to be updated. So as long as we have this text in front of us, you've configured a multi-row toolbar by using explicit wrapping breakpoint. So I guess instead of at the end of that section, remove any of these divider buttons, make it just remove any of these dividers. Is that what people think?
At minimum, I have no idea how many people will understand using an explicit wrapping breakpoint. Just to express myself.
Sure, that's a feature I didn't know existed. And Ralph says it's confusing. I agree. But just to keep in scope, let's not try to fix that, except where it uses the term buttons and just change it from remove any of these divider buttons to remove any of these dividers.
One second, I have the issue.
Thomas, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out that I thought under settings, source editing also had CK5 editor and stuff like that. So we may have some additional text that needs changing still.
Okay, and Ralph, this is the issue that added that.
Not added it, but that issue initially was about it was about the width of the toolbar configuration, exactly that back then, and that is was open in 2021 by myself, and yeah, sadly we cannot know how wide the node edit form is. That depends on the theme, the device, browsers, viewport, etc., as Wimlius correctly stated. But meanwhile, because the issue got more or less idle and was set to fixed, but someone brought up basically the fact that it's possible with a divider, and that way either you have those three dots if the viewport width is too narrow, or you add basically those dividers, and yeah, there's some discussion sparked up recently, as you can see here.
Okay, well, thanks for that. And that's 3229177. But let's get back to.
Yep.
Um,
Just wanted to add for context.
Thanks.
So what should I further change here?
Remove that word,
Just buttons?
just dividers.
Uh,
Yeah, so I guess remove the word button and make divider plural. Instead of divider buttons, make it dividers. Right.
but the question is, I just take a screenshot so we don't lose. Because if I remove that wrapping again,
Still there.
oh, but all the changes are gone. Oh, yuck.
Well, you took your screenshot,
Yeah.
so I think. Yeah, you seem to have had two of those on top of each other. So now we see the original text. The toolbar buttons should be the toolbar items that don't fit the user's browser window.
Just one sec to demonstrate. If we go in here, that's odd. I thought I'm in the full HTML, but I just wanted to demonstrate the problem of that 3 ellipses, because then I'm not sure if to use automatic grouping is the correct description for that, and might also be misleading to a certain degree.
Again, that I think that's out of scope for this issue. So if you want to change that, let's think about it
Yeah.
somewhere else,
Okay.
possibly in the issue that you brought up.
So bring up the screenshot.
And a quick time check. We have less than 10 minutes left.
So does that sentence also need?
I think the only change is at the start where it says toolbar buttons, make it toolbar items.
Okay.
Um, Thomas?
At the risk of patting ourselves on the back, I just wanted to point out that I really like the updated text a lot better in terms of it reduces my confusion around what's happening here. Because I seem to remember seeing plugins for quite some time in this context, and it's always caused me consternation. I don't recall for how long, but I like the text much better with these changes.
Okay, good. Um, so I think we're agreed. We got a thumbs up from Randy. I think we're agreed on the text. And Ralph has taken a screenshot, and I think I remember the changes. There are a couple of other places, at least if you, yeah, click on source editing, the word plugin is used twice in that help text. So what should we do about those? Not already supported by other enabled plugins. Should we call that toolbar items? Features? Thomas?
Toolbar configuration, because that's what it's actually referring to.
Ah, toolbar configuration. Get a thumbs up from Randy. Anyone else?
Yeah, toolbar configuration makes sense.
Okay. I I have a slight preference for items, but I think I'm outvoted. And then towards the end, it may be necessary to add DLDTDD in a format button that does not have the definition list plugin, but requires definition list markup. Um, Thomas, did you want to say something else?
I would replace plugin in that second instance with the word item, since that is what it would be referred to in my mind.
I don't really love definition list item. That's sort of the obvious replacement, but I wonder if we can do better. A format. Like maybe rephrase that whole clause instead of in a format that does not have a definition list plugin. If definition list in quotes or italicized um, is not enabled, is not on the toolbar.
I think for definition list, we kind of we could know if it's a button or a drop down. So we could use definition list button if it is a button.
True, it is a button. I guess I see the item list and numbered list buttons, unordered and ordered list buttons. I'm not sure where the definition list button is. Ralph?
Or how about sticking more to the terminology used up here and write something like in a format, a definition list does not have an active toolbar item.
So I wouldn't say the definition list has the item. Um, it's really the toolbar that doesn't have the definition list item, isn't it?
True.
And at the start of that sentence, it says, for example, if bold in quotes is enabled. So I'd like to be consistent with that and put definition list probably sentence cased in quotes. If bold is enabled, oh, if bold is enabled, but definition list is not. Oh, I'm sorry. No. Okay, here we go. End the sentence, use shorter sentences. For example, if bold is enabled, it is not necessary to add the strong tag, period. If definition list is not enabled, it may be necessary to add blah, 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 period.
If bold is enabled, it's not necessary to use the strong tag.
Right, and bold should be sentence cased, so capitalized and in quotes, as it currently is.
Yeah, it's just wanted to get the rough outline.
Yeah.
If the definition list is enabled,
Is not enabled.
Is not enabled. Yeah.
Then it may be necessary to add DLDTDD, period. And I think the rest of that sentence is unnecessary. And we are at the top of the hour. Various people have to drop. I get a thumbs up from Rosendo. So I think we should leave it there. I think I have an idea. I can I can post something in Slack to see if anyone wants to make further adjustments to it. So thank you all for coming. Rosendo, I think you gave me your Slack username earlier. I need your D.O username, or you can comment on the issue for today's meeting, and I can give you credit. And we'll do this again next week.
D.O username, is that the Drupal org?
Yes, Drupal.org.
Yeah, that's my username as well for Drupal.org.
Oh,
I believe.
okay.
Oh no, never mind. It didn't pull up. It's actually, I got it wrong. You're right. It shows it wrong. Let's see. I'll edit it. Or I'll give you two options here. I think the bottom one is the one, but it's showing on my website is resenda.fig as well. So I think it might be the bottom one. That's confusing.
I guess.
I have a
It's
question.
probably
Real fast. Is there like somewhere I can go? I'm new to contributing. Is there anywhere up? There's the issue too. Is there anywhere where I can find like a group for the usability issues?
So are you aware of the Slack channel, the UX Slack channel?
Yes, I just joined that. Is that where you guys are doing most of your discussions?
Yeah, and that's where we have the reminder for and where we post the Zoom link for this meeting.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Very welcome. And again, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Benji. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Benji. Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye.